to see you say. I'm building my legacy for the whole world to see, say. I'm building my legacy for the whole world to see me, say. Oh, say I'm building my legacy for the whole world to see you, say. We are standing bold, we're shoulder to shoulder. We are standing bold, we're shoulder to shoulder. We are standing bold, shoulder to shoulder. Playtime is over.
Hey, y'all. I mean, has it been a show on fire or what? Now, see, why people always trying to call me in the middle of a show? That's what I want to know. You should be watching the show. That's what you should be doing, watching the show from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. All right, so I'm here with my final guest for today, Lady Darice Carlton. And she is a native of Washington, D.C., and a Suitland High School graduate who's been married to Dr. Chad Carlton for 20 years. She's the mother of 3, her son Dylan, and just found out, you guys know I'm a twin, right? Twin powers, me and Cherie. But she has twin girls, Drew and Denver, and I think they're 10 minutes apart, she says. So she and her husband founded Healing H2O Church in Dulles, Virginia in 2006. And they're launching a second location next month in Suitland, Maryland at Drew Freeman Middle School. Darice, Lady Darice, is the senior executive pastor for Healing H2O. Annually, she travels to the Dominican Republic to feed and clothe children for the Carol's Love mission in memory of her aunt who passed away in 2014. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's so great to meet you, so great to connect. I'm reading about all this great stuff that you're doing in the world. Tell me about the start of Healing H2O Church and what made that happen. How did that come about?
Well, let me make it short and sweet. God called us at a very difficult time in our lives. Both of us were jobless.
Wow.
We were out in the Loudoun County area, and we had friends pulling on us, telling us to start a Bible study. My husband was an ordained minister, and so we started a Bible study. A year later, the Lord called us to plant a ministry. In an area that's very affluent. There aren't many Pentecostal ministries, and we were told would never make it.
Wow.
And so this month we're celebrating 12 years of ministry.
Wow, fantastic. Won't God do it? You know, that's one of the hashtag, y'all, hashtag won't he do it? Because when he gives you that vision, he will give you the provision for you to execute. I love it. So talk to us about how you started, meaning what were the kind of the numbers and how have you grown? And because now you're opening up a second location. So tell us all about that excitement and how you kind of drew people in to become a part of the congregation and all of that.
Well, my testimony is that God really has done it. Yeah. Won't he do it?
Won't
God
he do
has
it
done
for
it.
Real?
And I can go back as far as the day that we had no resources. We were at a very down time in our lives. Both of us were jobless. I had a very good job at America Online, which is out in that area, and was laid off. My husband had a very prominent job at the University of Maryland. When you get called to entrepreneurship, it's kind of like God will get you fired. So that's kind of our story. And so I had pretty much quit my job to stay home with my son. And right at that time, my husband was actually fired from a very prominent job.
Our story is so much alike.
And what's interesting is that it wasn't his fault, but as he sat in the meeting with those accusing him, his testimony is that the Lord spoke to him so clearly and said, do not defend yourself. Don't say a word.
Wow.
And so it was in that time, shortly after, that the Lord called us to ministry. And I'll never forget, he went out one Saturday morning. He said, I'll be back. And for us, we're both only children. We're both super spoiled. We're both like BFFs. And so for him to, as I look back, for him to like even say I'm going someplace but not tell me where was really odd for us. But that Saturday morning, my husband looked at me and he said, I'm going out. I'll be back. And I didn't even ask, like, where are you going? And it wasn't until he came back that he told me that he went out looking for a place for us to hold service. And the Route 28 corridor is a very prominent route in Loudoun County. And so he said the Lord led him to a number of different places, one of which was the Dulles Hilton Hotel. And the Dulles Hilton Hotel is one of the nicer hotels in our area. So he said when God led him there, he's like, well, what about the Holiday Inn? You know, sure, you mean Holiday Inn. You know how you're debating with God. So he said he went to the Dulles Hilton Hotel, and when he stepped in the lobby, a woman met him by the name of Monica Hobby. I will never forget her. And he explained to her that the Lord had called him to plant a ministry, that he had no resources, and wanted to know if he could have space. And what was so God-like is that she looked at him and said, we just had a meeting today on how we could get more churches into our facility. And so, to make a long story very short about the inception of our ministry, she pretty much told him to name his price. And so we started our first service, because my husband was born and raised in D.C., and our home church was the New Bethel Church of God in Christ, where literally his mom carried him there. We started with a whole lot of people coming to our first service. We had like 200 people, and I was like, yay!
Right.
So after service, I remember my husband looked at me, he said, now the telltale sign will be who's here next Sunday.
Right.
But God really has kept us, and he's provided. I mean, we've never gone lacking. We've always had people. Within the first 3 months, we started in a very small room, and within the first 3 months, we needed a ballroom, which then turned into 2 ballrooms.
Wow.
And I'll never forget the day when my husband looked at me and he said, the Lord said, drop the wall. And we were in one ballroom that wasn't full. And I remember having one of those moments like, drop the wall for what? Like, we need to fill this up first,
Right.
you know? And we dropped the wall that day, and about 15 minutes after dropping the wall, it was God that we had someone who came with about 15 people that was from a Hispanic church, said the Lord had led them to our church.
Wow.
So God has truly just provided in every sense of we've trusted him. It's definitely been a faith walk, but I can say that he hasn't disappointed. And what's interesting about me being a first lady is that I didn't grow up in church. I was Catholic, so it's not really like church now that I'm part of. And I remember telling God, I can't go to a church where it's just me and my child and my husband. And that's not to say that, you know, there's anything against small ministry, but I need people. I love people. I want to see the fruit of our labor. And God has definitely provided in that we're expanding and we're coming to Suitland.
I love it. That's such a powerful story. I gotta say, Sanita says, amazing. Thank you for joining us. Shelton Jones is watching. Noah, which I can never pronounce your name. You're with us every week, but thank you for being here. Says she also just came back from the Dominican Republic and Haiti, as well as Puerto Rico, doing ministry work. She'd love to connect. Sharice Hunt says Pastor Chad and Lady Derice are true blessings. Joyce says, won't he do it? Sharice says, won't he do it? Alice Nixon, won't he do it? So they're just loving the message, and I'm just loving the story. Like, it gives me goosebumps, because one of the things that, for me, what I wrote down here was divine orchestration will beat logic every time.
Yes.
Because logically in your mind, you're thinking, first of all, your husband is thinking, okay, we have no job, we have no resources, but we're going to where? You want me to go where, God?
To the nicest hotel in the area.
Hotel, right. And with no resources, and then they say, name your price? Like, literally, divine orchestration will beat it every time. It will beat logic. And so I love that. I love that story of kind of just the faith walk and the belief. Yes. But talk about, have there been times, even during, let's say things started to move, right? But have there been challenges that you faced along the way, and how do you regroup from, and I'm talking about challenges that you don't see coming, like you don't expect, and you're like, whoa, maybe you're blindsided by it. How do you pick yourself back up from those challenges to keep forging ahead?
That's a great segue for challenges, because for me, some of the challenges have been death. And so as a believer, in my immaturity, I thought that, oh, well, you know, if you live right and you do all the right things and you're prayed up, then when someone gets ill and you pray for them, surely God's going to heal them. And so it was in those probably instances where being a first lady, being so in love with those who attend our ministry, that the first death that probably rocked me was the death of one of our deaconess who was Sondra Bonner. And she was like a sister to me. Her husband and I have known each other since I was 12, and he's like my big brother. He gave me away at my wedding. And so Sondra, this beautiful person who you couldn't ask for a better church member, always there, always committed, never negative, always positive, always uplifting, came down with breast cancer, and within no time was dead. And I remember being healing waters. We've seen God wrought healing many times. God has done so many miraculous things, but I remember being really upset with God, like, why couldn't you have healed? If anybody deserved healing, surely she did. So that was a really pivotal point for me, even in my faith, where I had to examine what it was I truly believed. Because up until that point, I was really immature in my thinking. I fell into depression. I remember thinking, you know, why do anything? And the Lord really had to convict me to the point that just because you're doing all the right things doesn't mean that I'm going to grant you all your requests.
Yes.
And when the word talks about my ways are not your ways, that was one of those moments for me where I was like, okay, Lord, I had to surrender.
Yes. Yes.
And that experience prepared me for Carol's love, which was my aunt then 4 years later who died of cancer, who for a year I prayed for healing and wasn't healed. And so what came about then, which is just a great segue in Carol's love, is that the Lord has really pressed upon me in those moments. It's not for us to get depressed. It's not for us to take shield or even to, as the former people were talking about, you know, we can sometimes think too much of ourselves. But at that moment is when the Lord really called me to go be what my aunt was, to children who don't have clothes, who don't have shoes, who don't have clean drinking water. And so it was at that moment that the Lord called me to Carol's Love, which is a part of our Life Jacket nonprofit, and it's our international arm. And so every year I go and I feed children. Last year we fed 1,000 kids. My goal was 500.
Wow.
This year we're going to feed 1,000 kids, but I'm praying it's going to be even more.
Exactly.
So just, you know, that's kind of my testimony, is just in my maturity now, and not to say that nothing can get to me, that I've tried to really take the bad hands, the bad things, the things that are most difficult, and try to bring light to it. I believe that's what really our mission is with being saved and being believers, is that God wants us to shine light, especially in darkness.
Yeah, I love that. You just said so many powerful things, and I know all of you who are watching online at foxwave.com as well as on Facebook that you are just being blessed. My soul is being blessed. I'm loving everything that you're saying. I'm loving how you took onus of the fact that you were immature,
yes,
and you had to reevaluate things internally and why you were feeling the way you were feeling, and having these debates with God. And I love how you also allow yourself to have an open mind, open heart about him shifting your mindset,
yes,
about death,
yes,
and about the fact that not everybody's going to get healed, and just because you pray for it doesn't mean that's going to happen.
Right.
And then I love that you said that you were called to be what your aunt was,
yes,
through Carol's love. Like, that's so powerful, and that he was equipping you well before,
yes,
her passing, to be able to prepare you to be able to handle that, and then pick up the torch,
yes,
and take the work and continue the work. So just powerful, 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 powerful. So my question to you then is, so what do you do to stay positive consistently, even when there is sometimes negativity or there's toxic things happening around you? What do you personally do? Is it listen to a CD? Is it listen to gospel music? Is it read a book? What do you do? And then I want to talk a little bit about the importance of, you're doing all these amazing things. You got kids, you're doing the ministry, you're doing Carol's Love. How do you take time to nurture your marriage? And how do you make time for self-care?
That's a lot.
I know, right? You're like, girl, we only got 10 minutes.
Where do I start? Well, I think one of the things that definitely evolved for me over the 12 years in ministry, been married 20 years, is that up until starting the church, me and my husband really never argued. And it wasn't until we got into ministry, both of us full-time ministers, pastoring, that we began to see ourselves in a different light. Doing a lot of arguing, a lot of, and I finally had to take a step back and say, wait a minute, we're on the same team. But what I learned is that, and my husband kind of taught me this, being a life coach and having the wisdom that he has, we had to set parameters. Yeah. And so literally when it first started, my husband would say, okay, it's Monday. Monday is my day off. We don't talk about church at all. And I remember there were times on Mondays that I needed questions answered, and I would be so upset with him. And I'd be like, well, can you just tell me, you know, should I pay this or should I not pay this, or how do we? And he'd be like, I told you it's Monday. And I can remember just being infuriated with him, like, are you kidding me? Like, you're going to make me wait till tomorrow? Right. But what has happened over the years is that really has helped us by setting the parameters. My husband went through a disease that he almost died. And so that was a turning point for us for setting the parameters, because up until that point, the church was everything. I mean, we were there, we were sold out, we were eating, breathing church. I mean, somebody could call at 2 a.m. and say their mom had just been rushed to the hospital, my husband was there. And so we had no limits. We were just all out. And what we found is that we were no good to each other. We were no good to our children. and really that our first ministry is ourselves, our family.
See, you better say it. Your first, y'all hear me say it all the time. Your first ministry is home. Before you take that up, you cannot be